This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome to the year that, well, is 2015. It's our first day back at work here. Trust you've had a restful break. Some of us haven't, but still time to get the show back on the road. My name is Evan Jansen, and this show, of course, broadcasts live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. It's been a chaotic period the last week on South Africa's roads as millions crisscross the country over the festive period. We also look ahead to the matric results that is expected to be made public a little bit later today. There's been a building collapse in Kenya. We'll try and get an update for you there, and we'll close a bit later by looking at, well, innovation on the African continent with Katun and Char. But first, let's get the day's news from Katun Miller.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. It's good to be back. I'm Katun Miller, and let's just take a look at the news making headlines this morning. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga will this evening announce the 2014 matric results. The class of 2014 is not expected to fare better than their 2013 counterparts, who posted a pass rate of just over 78%. It's reported that the pass rate will go down by as much as 5%. This as the new CAPS curriculum may have proven to be the Achilles heel for last year's grade 12, who were the first to be examined on the content. Matric students are urged to take advantage of the SABC Matric Results SMS system by registering to receive their results via SMS. Students can register by SMSing their ID numbers followed by the exam number to 35658 or *120 *35658 hash. SMSs cost $3.
58 schools that copied. It's one too many, but I don't think we have to make it look any bigger than it is. It's less than 0.1%. So it's not a big issue. We'll deal with it.
Meanwhile, Teachers Union SASU says an expected decline in the matric pass rate this year cannot be blamed on educators. The union's Secretary General Mgwena Maluleke says teachers did not have enough training in the new CAPS curriculum and should have been better supported.
We had expected that the result would improve, and we still hold on that the result should improve. But our posture as an organization has always been that the improvement we are looking for is at the level of quality.
On to other news. The traffic department says the road death toll remains alarming, with 1,143 people killed in accidents since the beginning of the festive period until the 28th of December. In KwaZulu-Natal, 260 people have died in road collisions this festive season. Limpopo has had 146 deaths so far. Final national figures are expected next week. A man accused of killing 3-year-old Cuban van Wyk from Ryker Park is expected to appear in the Boksburg Magistrates Court today. Nathaniel Mpuku was arrested in August last year, days after the little boy's body was found at a mine dump. And at least one person has been killed and several others have been injured when a 6-story residential building collapsed in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. City officials say 22 survivors have been pulled out of the rubble of the building. It's still unclear how many others are still trapped. The collapse has sparked a major rescue operation involving police, city officials and medical workers. Now remember, all those top stories and more are all available on our Newsroom Facebook page, and then our journalists are all over the country out today, probably monitoring the roads as the traffic volumes increase. You can follow them on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Katrina. As the festive season draws to a close, thousands of motorists and holiday makers have made their way back home, and some already back at work. It's at this time of the year when South Africa counts its losses over the Christmas period. 1,143 people have died in 924 crashes on the roads during the festive season leading up to December the 28th. The Minister of Transport, Dipuo Peters, is expected to announce the final figures towards the end of this month. Most accidents, according to the Department of Transport, happened overnight between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning. South Africa spends more than 300 billion rand annually on road fatalities, and this time around will be no different. The World Health Organization estimates that 1.3 million people die on the world's roads every year, while as many as 50 million are injured. Almost 3,200 road fatalities recorded around the world every single day. Now, to look at, well, what road safety costs South Africans, we are joined today by the National Chairperson of the Justice Project of South Africa, Howard Dembowski, and from the Taxi Organisation of South Africa, that's Santaka, we have the Strategic Manager, Mr. Bafana Magagula. Very good morning to you, gentlemen. I suppose compliments of the season first up is in order.
Good morning, yes, and compliments of the season to the viewers.
Good morning, Evan, and compliments of the season to all your listeners.
We've had a year where there's been a real focus on road safety campaigns, both in the media and on our roads. Can I get let's start with you, Howard, opening remarks after what's been another deadly holiday season?
Well, it's very clear that the message is just not getting out there. And unfortunately, the reason that the message is not getting out there is that we have insufficient traffic law enforcement throughout the year, and we tend to step it up just during the festive season, over Easter, etc., etc. We've had this discussion so many times, I'm going blue in the face. I'd like to caution people with respect to the 1,143 road deaths that were reported up to the 28th of December of 2014. It's not actually true that our road deaths are down. The fact is that during the 5-day period between the 23rd and the 28th, 93 people per day were killed on our roads. And that is a shockingly high amount of people. If we add the 186 additional lives that would have been lost between the 28th and the 30th, we would come to 1,329, which is significantly up on the 1,184 reported during the 2013-14 festive period.
Well, even from our president's desk, Mr. Philip Daibosh, we're still very much concerned about the death tolls on the roads. However, we have noticed that in terms of our taxis, the call from our Hlokomela program is loudly heard by most of the drivers, not all, but most of them, taxi drivers and taxi owners, to operate roadworthy vehicles on the roads, and the drivers to be more cautious. And also would like to thank the passengers who adhered to our calls not to allow themselves to be overloaded, and those who were phoning us, some for comments and some for complaints, and we call for more cautiousness from our drivers, that this shouldn't only happened during the festive season, but it should continue. Our plan with our Hlokomela program, with the help of both Nissan and Toyota, is that we want to be at all taxi ranks and try to distribute as much information in terms of pamphlets as possible, go on a very aggressive campaign, not only during the festive or during the Easter, but throughout the year.
You mentioned the public participation. People that use vehicles are being called to actively participate in especially with a phone line that you've launched last year. Tell us about public participation. Are people that are using public transport, are they looking out for themselves when they use that facility?
Even most of them, yes, they do. Though there are still problems that some of them still just believe to get home than to concentrate on their safety, because during our roadblocks we've discovered that a few vehicles are still overloaded, especially with people coming with more luggages instead of sending luggages via other means, because our vehicles are actually made to carry passengers. I think that's another call we want to make more and more louder, so that our passengers should be aware that when that vehicle is pulling a trailer which is actually loading a capacity that is even higher than the vehicle itself, it becomes a danger to them.
Absolutely becomes a danger to everyone on the road. And I travelled by car down to Cape Town and back over the last couple of weeks, Howard, and what I saw was absolutely scary. There's a total disregard for the rules of the road. A lot of it has to do with people driving tired, I would think. When you get tired, your concentration goes and your decision-making goes. And how do you deal with that, especially over this period, if you look at the next week really being peak hour as people travel back before the school holiday starts from holiday destinations and so forth? This next week, how do we deal with that?
It's a very difficult thing, unfortunately, to deal with because it comes down to people policing themselves. Now, yes, traffic authorities can police our roads, and they have to. They need to do it on a regular basis. But measuring the fatigue of a person by asking them a question as to how long have you been driving for, etc., is a very difficult thing. It's a non-scientific process.
Yeah.
And Western Cape traffic authorities actually prevent people from continuing driving if they feel that those people are fatigued. But there's no provision in the law for that. And that is problematic. But people need to understand that it is highly irresponsible of you to drive for more than 200 kilometers or 2 hours without taking a break. That taking a break means getting out of your car, stretching your legs, refreshing yourself with refreshments, etc. But the fact is that aggressive driving and bravado remains one of the biggest killers on our roads. People don't obey the rules of the road because they think that they can beat the rules of physics. The fact is, it's law that you need to wear a seatbelt, but a lot of people don't. They think they can beat physics. You can beat the man-made laws, but you can't beat physics, and it's a very, very sad set of circumstances.
Mr. Magagula, we're going to put some pictures on of some of the problems we have on the roads with regards to public transport and the transportation of people. We continually see this kind of thing where people are transported en masse on open-top vehicles. That's against the law. How do you view that? And within your industry, how are you coming to terms with that kind of thing?
Well, Eben, this is actually very bad. I don't know how to deal with it. I think Howard has already mentioned that the people themselves need to police themselves. The people who get themselves loaded in that bakkie like that should actually first, each and every person should ask himself, do I want to arrive alive where I'm going?
Yeah.
Or do I want to risk my life and just tell myself I want to reach where I'm risking that I may not reach? Such a behavior really needs a call not only a call from us as safety observers, but also from people themselves who must save their own lives. I'm not talking about the driver who drives that bike.
You're talking about the passenger having to take responsibility, and that's probably the only way to deal with that kind of thing, overloaded taxis, overloaded buses, and so forth. I want to ask you, Transport Minister Dipuo Peters came out, late last week, told us that most accidents in South Africa happen overnight. Yeah. And we also see that a lot of the, let's call it professional transporters in your industry, in logistics and so forth, also transport goods and people overnight over far distances. Within the taxi industry, how are you dealing with that issue of driving overnight and transporting people overnight?
Look, I think at this point we're also working a plan to look at how best can we deal with it. But let me also indicate that if you stop most of these taxis that travels overnight, most of them, that is 90% of them, are not taxis that lives from taxi ranks.
Yeah.
It's private taxis or private kumbis, that most of them crosses the border. In most cases, if you go, for argument's sake, to Wanderers or Durban station, you will not find a taxi leaving the taxi rank with such the loads and trailers that are so overloaded that you see on our roads. Now, mainly it goes back to say, who are the people being transported in those vehicles? Do those people take care, or are they cautious? Are they cautioned about their safety? Do they understand what the risk they put themselves on? And I think that more and more education of that nature needs to be taken into account.
Howard, let's talk about law enforcement, because that's one of the key elements within the whole scenario. I was pulled over on my way back to Johannesburg about an hour outside, or 2 hours outside of the city, just past Kroonstad, for doing 131 in 120 zone, which is just over the speed limit, but I put that down to really wanting to get home. So I speeded up a little bit. It wasn't a criminal act. I was slightly over. When I was pulled over, the guy didn't want to give me a fine. He wanted me to give him money. Is that part of our problem?
Corruption is a huge problem, and I'm going to say to you that the attitude of it's only a little bit over the speed limit is a shocking attitude, and a lot of people have it.
Thank you,
People
Howard.
don't understand what the word limit means. It's not a target to be exceeded, it's a limit. But the fact is, just this past week, in fact, over a period of 2 days, New Year's Day and the 2nd of January, we've had 2 sets of video evidence of JMPD cops soliciting bribes taking place and getting published on YouTube. Corruption is so rife in this country, it's ridiculous. And the sad part of it is that our authorities are not taking this problem at all seriously. In fact, in the second instance, the station commander at Honeydew Police Station allegedly said that the cop can't be arrested because no crime has been committed because money didn't change hands. Yet you have this cop saying, give me $200, we can forget about the fact that you're driving under the influence of alcohol. This is a huge, huge problem. The other big problem, when we talk about crashes taking place in the late hours of night and early hours of the morning, is South Africa generally does not have a 24/7 traffic enforcement authority. There's only one in the country, and that's the Western Cape, and yet we choose to ignore this fact.
Finally, conclusion, final arguments from the both of you. We're going to deal with education shortly. Matric results very much uppermost in people's minds. I want to ask you, road safety, should it not be then made part of the education curriculum in South Africa in order for us to take the kind of step forward that we need to in saving lives on our roads? Mr. Magagula?
Well, we during the days of Minister Hadebe, we've made that proposal that it should be part of the curriculum, not only at high school level, actually from grade R and up, because that little child becomes a pedestrian who uses the road from then, not only when he's ready to drive a vehicle. And also, we are still appealing even to the present minister, Minister Dipuo Peters, to look into this, that a taxi driver should not be allowed to even obtain that PDP prior to him having gone a certain course. We are proposing, say, at least a 2 weeks course, one on customer care, 2 on defensive driving, and 3, then the K53 should be upgraded and be made different for a person who's going to transport lives.
Howard, final remarks for me.
Well, I agree that we need to start educating people from junior school level, and in fact, it's done in Zimbabwe, and we like to point fingers at Zimbabwe as being backward in comparison to South Africa. The fact is that has to happen, but we also need to re-educate the drivers on our roads. We really do, and I firmly believe, and JPSA firmly believes, that every 5 years, when you go to renew your driving license, you should undergo a retest. And trust me, a lot of people are not happy with that proposal at all.
They won't be happy. It's a very difficult test, I think, for most people to pass in the first place. I suppose that's why there's so many underhandedness that goes with it. But that's where we run out of time today. Thank you for joining us again from Justice Project South Africa. Howard Dembowski is the chairperson and also the strategic manager of Santaco, the National Taxi Association, Mr. Bafana Magagula. Thank you very much for joining us today, gentlemen. Let's have a look at your tweets. What are some of the things that you've seen on the roads? what are the things that you've been sending us? Some pictures, I hope. Let's have a look. Nkanyiso says, traffic lights not working on a Monday. Oh, how I've missed you, South Africa, home Monday. A little bit of sarcasm there after a holiday, of course. Ndukwana Ngatane, that's one of our reporters, reporting that traffic already heavy at the Maseru border between Lesotho and... I can't read behind the answer, as many go back to work. Hashtag SABC News. Yes, we'll keep you updated on SABC News what the latest is. Mediclinic says, don't become a statistics. At the World Health Organization estimates 55% of road traffic deaths in South Africa involves alcohol. Isn't that a scary statistic? And that's from the World Health Organization. And there you have, wow, a little bit of fun on this Monday morning. An African traffic jam at Mopani in South Africa. That one on Instagram from Mark Andrew Bone, a couple of days ago, sent that one in. A typical traffic jam that we've seen, well, in most of our parks around the country. Let's take a look at the front pages from around the globe. Now in the United Kingdom, the Times is looking at the car transporter ship that was grounded off the Isle of Wight over the weekend after developing problems once it left Southampton. And you'll see the International New York Times is looking at a silent protest by scores of American police officers who turned their backs on Mayor Bill de Blasio as he delivered a eulogy at the funeral of a slain officer yesterday. And the South China Morning Post is reporting that conservation officials there have ruled out making public a list of Hong Kong residents licensed to possess ivory for commercial purposes. Now, before we go to our first ad break of the year, let's just have a look at what's happening elsewhere in the country today. In Johannesburg's Boksburg's Magistrates Court, Nathaniel Katlego Mpoku is expected to appear in connection with the murder of 3-year-old Cuban van Wyk. Moving to the mother city, the ANC is expected to brief the media on preparations for the January the 8th celebrations a little bit later this week. Staying in Cape Town, President Jacob Zuma will conduct a walkabout and a public meeting with Kwalanga residents ahead of the ANC's anniversary. And of course, cricket lovers, the third test between South Africa and the West Indies continues in Cape Town. The West Indies, of course, 2 down with still 4 runs, I think, behind the South Africans. Should be a cracking day's cricket at Newlands a little bit later. This is Newsroom. We'll be back with you shortly.
You can't have a gut feeling about other people's gut feeling.
Ngaba has continued the tradition of passing stories onto the next generation using a platform that offers stories to a far more greater audience.
Zombie no go unless you tell them to go.
This is what the audiences all over the world knew Fela Kuti for.
Join Musam Khalifi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CAT.
This week we are taking you around the continent, telling you stories about what makes Africa, Africa.
We now head to the Kenyan coast, where we meet a man using needles to fight a growing drug culture.
A recent study revealed that there are 850 drug addicts in Diani alone, with over 220 using injectable drugs such as heroin.
In my community, I've seen a lot of these people suffer.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom on SABC News. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga will this evening announce the 2014 matric results. The CAPS curriculum may prove to be the Achilles heel for last year's grade 12s, who were the first to be examined on this content.
The Curriculum and Assessment Policy Statement CAPS was phased in grade 10 in 2012 to strengthen the curriculum. It resulted in major content changes to certain subjects. And it seems the class of 2014 struggled with that content during the exams. Quality assurer Umalusi has pointed out that there's a significant increase in the maths failure rate compared to 2013. Pupils also fared poorly in maths literacy, physical science and business studies.
We expected it to be much more tougher because we've introduced new learning areas. We have increased also different types of questions, higher order questions. So it really would not be the same like any other year.
Teachers Union SATU believes teachers could have been better prepared.
We had realized that after training, the teachers still do not understand what was expected of them in terms of CAPS.
Exams have been marred by allegations of group copying in KZN and the Eastern Cape.
58 schools that copied, it's one too many, but I don't think we have to make it look any bigger than it is. It's less than 0.1%. So it's not a big issue, we'll deal with it.
More than 500,000 pupils sat for the 2014 exams.
Those that are going to be writing supplementary exams, as soon as we release the results, they should start reading again immediately. And those that fail also, we don't want them to be discouraged. We want them to repeat their matric because they have already invested it too much. 12 years of the investment should not go to waste.
Faith Daniels, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Here, thousands are awaiting, and of course the SABC will broadcast the ceremony, the results ceremony that is live from 6 p.m. That's on SABC 1, our sister channel, and also live on this very channel 404 this evening from 6 o'clock. Now, joining me in studio is the Acting Chief Director of Communications in the Department of Basic Education, Elijah Mhlanga. Very good morning, Elijah. Thank you for joining us. Firstly, we know it's a very busy day. It can be a bit of a deurmekaar day in a way because there's so many last-minute things, but everything's on track for tonight then?
Absolutely. In fact, we're well ahead on schedule in terms of the arrangements that we needed to make. So we are not running around trying to fix anything. Everything was done in time. So we're quite relaxed and just looking forward to the time.
What are the things that concern you? You know, there have been things, people have been talking about cheating. Of course, you always have that with every exam and so forth. There are reports in various provinces of the like. What are the things that concern yourself and the Department of Education at this juncture?
I think it's the issue of quality in the system. You know, the nation has been calling for quality. And some people have been saying over the years that we should stop talking about the pass rate because it hides the actual things that should be taken into account when we talk about the results. But as a department, we've worked very hard since 2009, implementing a new curriculum, which has brought in a number of things that are now in the system starting 2014. One of that is the change in some of the topics of some subjects, mathematics, maths literacy, business studies, and some of those. So the learners that road were the first to be examined using this new curriculum. But the other thing is that there are new assessment components that were not there before, and as well there's past requirements that now learners need to deal with. So in other words, things are becoming even tougher to go over, particularly at the matric level. But you know, it's the entire senior level. If you look earlier this year, in fact, about a month ago or so, I think I was here talking about the past requirements for grade 7, 8, and 9, meaning that the system is already beginning to experience changes as we introduce these quality elements.
Now, in South Africa, you can't help it. 2013 was a record pass rate, 78.2%. We seem to be obsessed with the pass rate. But this year, you guys are trying to change the way you think about education and the way the country should be thinking about it. It's not about the number of people that pass. It's about the quality of that pass. How do you view that, and how do you see South Africa respond to a pass rate that might decline somewhat?
You know, when you introduce quality, it means you're raising the bar. Those that have been jumping at a particular level, it means they'll have to jump a little bit higher now. And not everyone will be able to achieve that. even more so because it was the first time that we're doing that. So there will be a shock in the system somehow. But what we are going to do as a department is to look at the trends that we're going to pick up and strengthen where we need to. Remember, it's not just new for the learners. It was new for the teachers. It was also new for the examiners. They were setting these papers for the first time this year. So everyone is learning. That's why there's huge interest in the results for the class of 2014. But this is the beginning of the quality that we've been calling for as a nation, to say, forget about the pass rate, look at the quality. We have now started implementing exactly that.
You mentioned the teachers, and we saw in our news clips a little bit earlier that SATU have come out and say that they felt more support should have been given to the teachers when launching this new CAP system. What's your response to that, firstly, and how do you then go forward with the teachers and getting them to make 2015 an even better year?
You know, training began several years ago. The decision to implement CAPS was made in 2009, and that's when we also started implementing this. So training has been happening across the country, and we had to start at some point. I mean, it's difficult to say we'll wait for everyone to be able to be on the same levels of competence before we can implement this. Remember, we are human beings. We are gifted differently. Some catch things faster than others. We've done all that we could. We are happy that they also assisted the department in training, because it's also in their best interest for their members to understand what CAPS needs from them, for them to be able to implement this. But training has been done. CAPS has been coming over the years. That's why we also implemented it in phases. We didn't just do it all at once. Even these grade 12 learners who wrote now in 2014, they had been studying through CAPS from 2010. So it was not completely new. What is new is the examinations and the structure of the papers. That had to be done, and had to be done in 2014 as we're completing the implementation of CAPS.
Another element within CAPS, or within education rather, in general, is the role of the parents and parenting. Are we communicating better with our parents now? Do we get more of our parents involved or do we get enough of our parents involved in the education system and in the education of their children?
You know, even the president always says we need to make education as a societal issue, and the minister repeats that every time she's in a public platform. It is because we are not happy with the level of involvement of parents in the education of their children. We need more of it, and we hope that as we call for it, parents will begin to realize that it's not the responsibility of the education employees only. Actually, the children belong in the community. They belong to all of us. We need to take care of them. We need to support them. There are workbooks that they bring from school home. It means that the parent must make time and help their child with the schoolwork. So it's for all of us. In fact, even with the school governing body elections, which are coming up now in March, we are going to be training SGB members to learn how to monitor curriculum implementation, hoping that eventually it will filter through in the community for them to be able to know that teaching is happening. Where it's not happening, they report it and do something about it, because it is the basics that we need to go back to. We need to make sure that when learners go to school, they arrive there on time and teaching starts in time, and everyone does what they're supposed to do in the given hours in the day, so that there is enough time at the end for revision and all those other things that we need to do.
Elijah, fantastic. Thank you for joining us. We know you've got a very busy schedule ahead of yourself today. So thank you for coming in and putting us into the picture. Of course, 6 o'clock this evening, the Minister of Education, Angie Motshekga, of basic education that is, will go live on this very channel with the matric results for 2014. Elijah, thank you once again for joining us this morning. Let's have a look at your tweets. Of course, at SABC Newsroom on Twitter is where we love you to send us your contributions. Kagiso Ndlovu says, fear is what stops you. Courage is what keeps you going. That's from an unknown. Matric results is out. Well, it's in much less than 16 hours now. It's about, 8 hours away. Letabo Nkomo says, as we wait in suspense for the matric results, I recall the butterflies that were going through my own stomach. All the best to those who wrote exams. That one from Letaba. Yes, it is a rather nerve-wracking time for a young person in South Africa. Bulelani Mpako says, Minister Angie, usually all smiles before the release of the matric results. No smile when asked about performance. Gave reasons for decline. Yes, it's quality over quantity, Bulelani. That's where we're at. Rocket Wade says, names won't be in newspapers this time. Only ID and exam numbers. Yeah, in a way, that is a good way to protect the individual. I say Thabo Momoti says, as a country, we've become obsessed with quantitative analysis rather than looking at the quality of the results. That, Thabo, is the message coming from Elijah Mhlanga from the Department of Basic Education on the show this morning. Let's worry about quality and not so much about quantity. That should be the mantra for all of us in South Africa. And parenting, as pointed out by the Basic Department of Education, parenting is as important as education. Two goes hand in hand. But let's take a look now at what's happening on our Newsroom Facebook page this morning. Today you'll see there that US crude and Brent futures dropped to a fresh 5.5-year lows on today. This is worries about a surplus of global supplies amid weak demand continue to drag on oil markets. We'll have that for you tomorrow. Then you'll see some experts expect that the class of 2014 will not fare better than their 2013 counterparts, who posted a pass rate of just over 78%. Is that important? And then Indonesian Navy divers have taken advantage of calmer waters to resume efforts to identify suspected wreckage from a missing Indonesian Air Asia passenger jet today. You can find all of those stories and a whole lot more on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also visit sabc.co.za/news for all the latest news updates. This is Newsroom. We will be back with you after a short break.
There's a lot of corruption there. What are you doing with that?
The word corruption is actually misplaced.
Any elements of corruption must be rooted out and punished accordingly.
SASCO is denying that there's any evidence of such.
We've heard the allegations about students not assisting the situation.
Why do you have to be pressurized to do your job, Mr. Msulu?
We spend everything that we get given by government.
It's an excuse.
Who's failing you at government?
Who's failing as a government?
Who's not heeding your call?
The government is the government.
Is Dr. Blade Nzimande doing well?
With what he has done, we want him to do more. We want him to deliver more.
So he's failing.
The Minister of Higher Education, don't put words in my mouth.
Watch Question Time with me, Mpho Tsedu, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
And welcome back to Newsroom. Let's just recap the news making headlines this morning. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga will this evening announce the 2014 matric results. The class of 2014 is not expected to fare better than their 2013 counterparts, who posted a pass rate of just over 78%. It's reported that the pass rate will go down by as much as 5%. This as the new CAPS curriculum may have proven to be the Achilles heel for last year's grade 12s, who were the first to be examined on the content. Matric students are urged to take advantage of the SABC matric results SMS system by registering to receive their results via SMS. Students can register by SMSing their ID numbers followed by the exam number to 35658. That's 35658 or *120 *35658 hash. SMSs cost R3 each. The traffic department says the road death toll remains alarming, with 1,143 people killed in accidents since the beginning of the festive period until the 28th of December. In KwaZulu-Natal, 260 people have died in road collisions this festive season. Limpopo has had 146 deaths so far. Final national figures are expected next week. And at least one person has been killed and several others have been injured when a 6-story residential building collapsed in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. City officials say 22 survivors have been pulled out of the rubble of the building. It's still unclear how many others are still trapped. The collapse sparked a major rescue operation involving police, city officials and medical workers. More on all those top stories are all available all day long on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can then also follow us on Twitter and our journalists who are all out and all over the country today on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katrina. We were going to bring you an update from Nairobi on that building collapse there, but unfortunately we're having a bit of difficulty getting hold of our correspondent, Sarah Kimani. That's our East African correspondent. So we've got no update for you at this very moment, but stay tuned. At the top of the hour at about 10 o'clock, we should get an update from Kenya on the very latest there. One person confirmed killed, 22 survivors have been pulled out, and they're still worried about a host of other people being trapped there. But we conclude our first show of the year with Newnovation. Newnovation is a digital platform that focuses on amplifying innovation and good news from across the African continent. Along with the new innovations, the platform highlights selfless actions by individuals like yourselves, companies and governments on the African continent. Tomorrow, Newnovation will be celebrating its one-year anniversary, termed #OneNewniversary. Now, Katu Machao, one of the founders of Newnovation, joins us today in studio to discuss the innovation outlook for 2015. Good morning, Katu. Happy New Year, I suppose, or compliments of the seasons in order.
Thank you very much. You're looking good.
I'm feeling a little bit tired, and I must say it's a little bit more difficult. Typical today, he's even brought his wife with. She's sitting here behind the scenes.
Yes.
So I must have brought you in away from your holiday. That's an extended holiday. I thought you were always on holiday. You're traveling around the world all the time.
Well, it's all necessary for that credit card to be refilled. So I needed to be here today. Like yours, I hope yours is not that exhausting.
Oh, you know, my wife is still on holiday, so I'll take a beating for at least another week, I suppose. But let's focus on what's important.
Yes.
Innovation Africa 2015. What is driving innovation in Africa, and how do you see that play out in 2015?
Africa, it's a huge playground. It's a huge bowl of opportunities, boundless opportunities. The need to survive, the need to grow, the need for change, and the need for things to be easier in Africa. Somebody was telling me recently that in Africa, when we innovate, we are innovating for solutions that are going to change people's lives almost immediately.
Yeah.
We're not talking about drones and the stuff, or digital gaming, or what is going on where people, it's more of entertainment. But with Africa, the innovation is driven by the need to survive.
Bread and butter.
Bread and butter issues. If you look at what has dominated 2014, it was issues of education. We've seen a lot of new technology that came about education. We've seen a lot of alternatives for transport that was happening in Cape Town, as opposed to your Uber. We've seen it grow. It's one of the biggest companies currently.
I used Uber because, you know, in Cape Town they do drink a lot and you can't drive over the festive season.
That's true.
So that was very. But talk to us about some of these innovations that's come out in 20. And this is by Africans for Africans.
By Africans for Africans. That is the toilet innovation that came out last year. It's been piloted. Bill Gates is also involved in that particular toilet. He said we called it the toilet challenge. We had the bucket challenge last year. And the other bucket challenge was the Ebola bucket challenge. But that is another good thing that came out of Africa, which is a toilet that you can just use, and the flushing mechanism is different. Then we've got the the jelly ride that is up there, which is currently being piloted in Cape Town. Not only piloted, but it is already up and running. So we've seen this kind of innovations.
Is that a public transport system? Is it like a rickshaw, a modern day rickshaw?
It's a modern day rickshaw, definitely. Okay. I mean, from those in Devon in the olden days to that now, which is solar powered, it's battery powered, and it's also your advertisement type of an innovation. So those are the type of innovations.
This is happening in Cape Town, and if it's successful, it will be sort of moved throughout the rest of the continent, one would think.
Yes, definitely. That is the bus that we saw coming out in South Africa, which is sort of a one-stop shop where you've got your laboratories, you've got your movie theaters, but it's basically for your educational purposes, which has been modified in South Africa.
In layman's terms, this is a mobile school that was developed here in South Africa, and this is going to make its way around the continent to help with education, the basic needs, technology, introduction to technology and so forth.
Yes, the company that is doing that is South African. They've got a couple of buses that are already doing the rounds across Africa, and they're growing bigger. So this is what I was saying, that we've seen a lot of innovations that are more educational based that are coming in, and we've seen also the private sector embracing technology and saying how best can we be able to develop to meet the basic needs of a normal man on the street in such a way that we can be able to move. I mean, this young man, the stuff that is done, it's unbelievable. It's quicker, it's easier, it's cheaper. You know, and I mean, innovation, a lot of it is based on the fact that people do not want to take the longer route. We spoke about the dry bath that came out last year. This young man from Limpopo, he created the dry bath purely because he didn't want to bath. You know, so you can imagine that.
Well, you should say no, he didn't want to waste water. Well, that would be more politically correct.
But in the light of Ebola, then we've seen a lot of those coming out. But looking into the new year, 2015, we're going to see a lot of more governments, both mainly from your local governments that are embracing technology. In the advent of fiber. That came through. We've seen it being rolled out in Kenya with the 7 Seas. Locally, we've seen the likes of Fiberco rolling it out. The city of Joburg, they are rolling it out across the Ria Vaya bus stations, where they will be having free Wi-Fi across the different stations. So you can see that local governments are beginning to embrace technology.
What are the things that are holding us back on the continent? Is there a resistance to change? Because innovation and change kind of go hand in hand. Are we conservative, or are we opening our minds a little bit more now?
We are, however, we need a private sector-led innovation approach, but a government-supported. Now, that is where we're lacking. We do not have governments across Africa that are really coming out strongly and saying, this is what we're going to do. If you see, so we saw last year, Tony Elumelu Foundation in Nigeria, they've put up $100 million to support innovation. And now we're looking for more and more governments like your Rwanda government, your Kenya government, where presidents are embracing innovation from the top. I mean, we can give it fair enough to South Africa with the recent board that has been elected of the National Innovation Chamber. They've got great people that are sitting there, which we're hoping that they will drive it. However, to answer your question fully and directly, it is that we need governments to be able to really come out and support innovation, not only through mouth, but through the funding and through the policies that will support innovation.
Through deeds, and deeds normally go in with millions and millions of US dollars on the continent.
I mean, let's talk about alternative energy a bit. Everybody's talking about HCOM and all that and more. So there's a lot of alternative energy that needs to come out of that. So that's where we're looking at. But then again, 1 year anniversary for innovation. We've got great things. We look out for a lot of exciting stuff that will be going through schools and encouraging young people to think critically and to be more innovative in their thinking. You need to get them to start thinking, how am I going to be a better person tomorrow, as opposed to how big and better am I at a Tetris game or something along those lines.
How am I going to make a contribution to the world that I live in? Thank you very much, Katu Mashar, one of the founders of New Innovation. Of course, New Innovation is a digital platform that looks at how Africa is changing the game for itself. Yes, we should all take charge on this continent if we want to make it the African century. Thanks, Katu, for joining us today. Let's have a quick final look at your tweets before we wrap this first live broadcast of 2015. At SABC Newsroom, of course, is where you can send us your contributions. But let's have a look at some of the tweets. There we go. Letting Eliphas says, my heart goes to the families and friends of the collapsed building in #Ruma. That is, of course, the building collapse in Kenya. We'll try and get you an update, as I told you a little bit earlier. Kidera was a mistake. That was unavoidable. Huruma tragedy. At the moment, 1 person confirmed dead, 22 survivors, with many more trapped under the rubble of that collapsed building. That function guy says, let's not forget that a report on the integrity of buildings in Nairobi was dismissed. Now that is very, very concerning. That's where we leave you this morning. It's been a tough start to the new year. Newsroom, of course, broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast then at 5 a.m. the following morning. We also stream live on YouTube at that time with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We simply love it in the morning.